My name is Bree, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel, Breezy Banter, a place where I talk about the things I want to talk about. In today's video, I want to talk about new makeup releases, but I also want to focus on why I don't plan on actually purchasing probably any of these items, and that in turn makes it a bit of an anti-haul. One of the things that I want to normalize on my channel is really appreciating the beauty and objects that are around us for what they are, but not necessarily having to acquire them to appreciate them. Many of the makeup products that I'm going to talk about I think are objectively beautiful, but I don't need them in my collection. They can look beautiful on the shelf in a Sephora store, but that doesn't mean that they need to look beautiful here on my bathroom shelf. Without further ado, let's get into the makeup. I'm going to be browsing Trend Mood 1 for the what's what in terms of new makeup, and the pictures that I'll use in this video all come from that Instagram account. And I have my computer right here in front of me, so if you see me looking down, that's how I'm actually checking out Instagram. So the first product that I want to talk about is the new Color Fuse Glassy Blush Bombs by Haus Labs. And these actually have my attention, and a big part of that is because there's a lilac color. And from what I can tell, it seems like lilac blush is kind of making a comeback. If you've watched my other videos, I believe this was in the makeup products that I've wanted for a really long time but haven't bought video. I talked a lot about how I really like purple blushes, but it has been quite difficult to find them on the market. And not only that, what I also find is if there does happen to be a purple blush or a lilac blush or a lavender blush, they tend to turn pink on the skin. So in the past, when I've gone searching for a purple blush, I want a purple blush that looks purple on my skin and not a purple leaning blush that turns pink on my skin. So that's what really draws me into this release. That said, when I look at these blushes swatched on the skin, it seems like this blush might actually have that problem. It seems like it kind of turns into a pinky color as opposed to a strictly purple color. And Haus Labs is a bit more on the expensive side, so I certainly wouldn't buy this without swatching it in store first. But I suspect that I won't get this because it's simply not the color that I'm really looking for. The next item that I want to talk about is the Natasha Denona Golden Eyeshadow Palette. So I have a few Natasha Denona palettes. I have the Midi Glam palette and the Mini Gold palette. And I quite like her shadows and I like the quality of her shadows, but her products are definitely on the more expensive end, as I think many of us are familiar with at this point in time. Again, in that video that I mentioned earlier, the makeup products that I've wanted for a really long time but didn't end up buying video, I talked about how there seems to be a weird conversion going on behind the scenes at Natasha Denona. Her products are extremely overpriced in Canada, even given the conversion factor. So this really puts me off from ever purchasing from her, especially while I'm in Canada. I could see perhaps if there's something that I absolutely love, if I go to visit the US, picking it up there, and it will just end up being cheaper that way if I pay the conversion fee on my credit card as opposed to buying it here in Canada, which is sad, and I don't like being treated that way as a customer, but that's why I foresee future purchases if there's something that I absolutely must have from Natasha Denona. That said, this palette is pretty, but there's, I think, 9 repeat shadows. So if you own any Natasha Denona, I strongly recommend that you double check which shadows you have versus what shadows are in this palette, because there's quite a lot of overlap, particularly if you have several of her palettes already. I'm just reading the top comment on Trend Mood, and it also kind of summarizes my thoughts. This person says, if this was ColourPop or any other drugstore brand, y'all would have read them to filth, but Natasha Denona y'all praise even though she's 3 times the price of ColourPop. I don't get you. I fully support this. I think if this palette was released by e.l.f. or name a company, people wouldn't really care. I see a lot of people, particularly on the Beauty Guru Chatter subreddit, really praising this and being really attracted to it, which sure, by all means, you like what you like. And while I think this is pretty, it's definitely nothing remarkable. It has a lot of warm tones, and warm tones aren't really what I tend to lean towards. I think I really like them in the pan, but on myself, they're less flattering than I would like them to be. There is one shade in this palette, the Kava shade, which I believe was in the original gold palette, if I'm not mistaken. That is now discontinued, and I've seen that shadow swatched a million times over, and it's really an incredible shadow. But I'm of course not going to buy one palette just for one shadow. The next product that I want to talk about is the Bare Focus Niacinamide Skin Tint by Wet n Wild Beauty. It says it's a sheer to medium buildable skin tint with 5% niacinamide, hyaluronic acid, and peony extract, delivering smoothing natural perfection, blurs imperfections, finishes with a soft satin glow, and perfects while concealing redness and blemishes so naturally. A clean, skin-loving serum foundation. And this is listed at $8.99 for 27 shades. That's a pretty solid price for a foundation. It seems like drugstore foundations, drugstore prices in general, have just gone up a ton. I remember being like 12 years old, going to the drugstore, seeing foundations, and feeling bad about how expensive they were. And at that point in time, like, my parents were buying stuff for me, but I never asked for anything like that because they were so expensive. I can't remember off the top of my head how much they were. My guess is they were probably like $15 or $16. And of course, it's only gone up since then. So seeing a foundation at that price at the drugstore with 27 shades is pretty impressive. I do like that it's sheer to medium and buildable. I like the idea of it blurring imperfections. That said, it's a soft satin glow. My skin tends to lean towards the oilier side, so I'm not really looking for anything to add glow. I got enough glow on my own, thank you very much. One thing I'll mention is I don't tend to like having skincare put in my makeup. I do that separately. I don't need to get niacinamide or peony extract or hyaluronic acid from my foundation. If I do need those things, which I don't, they're not a part of my current routine, I would get them from another method, like a serum, for example, so that's not a selling point for me. That said, I am glad to see that there is a cheaper option coming to the drugstore, which makes it just more accessible for many people. And especially that shade range, 27 shades for the drugstore, that seems like quite a lot. So that's pretty good to see. As I'm scrolling, there are so many bronzer releases. It's actually quite surprising to me. We tend to see the odd bronzer release, but it feels like it's just kind of one after another after another. I'll be honest, this is my hot take. I don't wear bronzer. I think I've only owned one bronzer ever. It was the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer, I think is what it's called. It's the one that everyone talked about, everyone loved. I probably had the compact for 5 or 6 years, but I did end up getting rid of it. I did use it from time to time, but it was a step in my routine that I didn't like. I didn't feel like it really made a difference in terms of how my makeup looked. And I really had to force myself to do it. So I decided that I'm not about that life. I'm gonna wear the makeup that I wanna wear, so I got rid of it. I'll be honest, when I see other people putting on bronzer, I occasionally can see a difference, but it's a difference that doesn't necessarily make a look better or worse, in my opinion. It just looks slightly different. But for the most part, I don't really see any difference when I watch like makeup beauty YouTubers putting on bronzer. So this is just a step in my makeup routine that I completely avoid all the time. So I won't be purchasing any of the bronzer releases that are coming out. Okay, the next item that I want to talk about is the Love is Love All Over Face Palette by Danessa Myricks. When I first saw this, I think I gasped because of how awful I think it looks. This to me is the epitome of there being a disconnect between the way some people view luxury or high-end makeup versus drugstore makeup. There are some things that I see some high-end or luxury makeup companies do that if they were a company that was sold in Ardene, they would never get away with it. And this is like the prime example of that. I frankly just don't understand this palette at all. There's 11 shadows, if I'm counting correctly, if we count each individual shade as its own shadow, even though I'm not sure how you're supposed to use that. If you like take your brush in it, that seems like it's just gonna get messy. If you blend all those colors together, you're gonna get brown, most likely. If you told me that this was a palette released in 2012 by a company that was selling their makeup in Ardene, I would be like, yep, that makes sense, this maps. So this is pretty disappointing. I think Danessa Myricks generally makes pretty nice products that are nice to look at. This seems just like a hit and a miss as far as I'm concerned. It's also a bit disappointing that I don't think anything has been released in terms of whether or not they'll be donating any money off of the sale of this palette. But that being said, I just want to remind you that you don't need to purchase anything to make a donation. I think as an individual, it would behoove you to consider donating directly instead of through another company, as a company such as this can likely use it as a tax write-off. If you haven't noticed, I've been including a link to the GiveWell website in the description of my YouTube videos. If you're not familiar with GiveWell, they're an organization that is very closely linked to the effective altruism, I'll say group, that's not quite the right word, Just pulling it up on Wikipedia now, it says effective altruism is a 21st century philosophical and social movement that advocates using evidence and reason to figure out how to benefit others as much as possible and taking action on that basis. So there are people who might define themselves as effective altruists. If you're familiar with Peter Singer, I believe he identifies as such. And GiveWell is very closely linked to that mindset. So if you donate to GiveWell, they follow the maxims that I just described for effective altruism, where they then take those donations and give them to charities based on the amount of good that it will do. And this is something that I feel pretty strongly about. I'm not completely 100% an effective altruist. The donations that I've made historically aren't necessarily to the groups that do the most good in the world. Some of them have been, some of them are a bit more local to myself and to my interests, but I think it is a very noble organization to consider. And one other thing I'll mention as well, effective altruism kind of came into the limelight because of Sam Bankman-Fried. If that is your introduction into effective altruism, I very much encourage you to consider other sources for information about the movement. I'm happy to give you some. If you ask me in the comments, I'll point you in the right direction. But I was familiar with this group way before Sam Bankman-Fried. I don't think the Sam Bankman-Fried need affect one's desire to give to an organization such as GiveWell. Anyways, to go back to the makeup, I think this palette is ugly. I certainly won't be picking it up. And if you like it, then I'm happy for you. But if you're considering purchasing it because they may or may not be donating money to a LGBTQ IA+ cause, then I would strongly encourage you to consider just donating separately on your own. The next item that I want to talk about is the True Match Lumi Le Liquid Blush by L'Oreal. I think this is a really nice release. It looks like there are only 6 colors, and none of them are that purple color that I've just described searching for. One other thing I'll mention is I've really been interested in also getting like a very kind of pure red blush. I used to have the Rare Beauty Soft Pinch Liquid Blush in the color Grateful, which is like the exact color that I wanted, but I only had it for about a year or so, and after about the 6-month mark, I thought it smelled a little weird, and so I was really hesitant to use it, and I was like, okay, maybe this is just how it always smelled. I'm not really sure. I'll just hold on to it for the time being. And I came to realize that no, that is not how it always smelled. And so it kind of went off pretty quick, about after 6 months. And it took me another 6 months to decide to get rid of it, or to come to the realization that I should get rid of it. And so because of that, I don't have that color anymore. I don't have anything else in my collection that is that color, and I quite liked it, but I also haven't replaced it yet. So I am also kind of passively looking for something in that space. And I really liked the liquid formula of that Rare Beauty blush. Obviously, as I think we're all aware of now, very highly pigmented, which is less my thing, but I could make it work. And so I think something like this from L'Oreal, if it was in a color that I was more interested in, I would probably consider it, especially, it says it retails for $12.38. I'm wondering if it's that amount because they're converting from something. It's so strange because looking at everything but the swatches, I think they look gorgeous, but then looking at the swatches, I'm like completely put off from them. So I won't be picking this up. Again, just none of the colors that I'm interested in. That lilac color, as well as just kind of a bold red color, it's not here, but it seems like if this is a nice formula, if this works well for people, it seems like it'd be a good option, but I won't be picking it up. Okay, the next item that I wanted to talk about is the new honey-infused hydrating lip oils by Gisou, is how I'm guessing it's pronounced. So I haven't tried this product before in the past. I have used a few other Gisou products, particularly their hair oil, which I loved. It's not the one that I'm using now. I probably won't go back to it because I also prefer the Moroccan oil, one that I've gone through so many bottles of, as well as the one that I currently have in rotation, which isn't a hair oil, but it's a leave-in conditioner. But from what I could tell from the Gisou hair oil, it was very high quality. And so that kind of makes me interested in this, particularly because of what I assume is the Tutti Frutti color here, which it's made in a really appealing way. I can, like, those colors speak to me. 2 of my favorite colors are yellow and pink, the other being purple, so that really calls to me. That said, once you pull the applicator out and put it back in a couple times, those colors are all going to mix together, so I very much doubt that it's going to stay looking like this. So while it's beautiful to see, beautiful to look at, it's not something that makes sense to purchase. They're also quite expensive. $32 for a lip oil is kind of ungodly expensive in my opinion. I feel like there are just better ones that you can get at the drugstore for like $12. Pina colada also sounds really good. Okay, I'm reading through the comments now and I'm glad to see that other people feel the same about the price. I hadn't read them before I made the comment on the price, but the top comments are, nah, because who the F is paying $32 for a lip oil? Cute, but $32 for a lip oil is insane. And if you're someone who buys things like this price, I hate you. Oh my gosh. $32, is this a late April Fool's joke? Yeah, so I'm glad I'm not the only person that feels that way about a lip oil being that expensive. The next product that I'll talk about is the Pink Lilac. Looks like it's a collection from Dior. They have a lip glow oil for $40. Again, way too expensive, not interested. A rosy glow blush in a lilac color, which as I've just described several times, quite interested in. I think I saw a swatch of this somewhere, I can't remember where, and it very much was the epitome of a purple blush that turns pink on the skin. So because of that, I'm not interested. My understanding is these blushes are quite well liked, but I just won't be purchasing it. There's the Dior Addict Lip Glow, not interested. Dior Addict Lip Maximizer Plumping Gloss, also not interested. All of these items are $40, which I get it's Dior, but too much for me. Okay, we're going back quite a while now. I'm almost a month back, but this is the first video that I've done of this style, so I guess I could go back as far as I want. The next item that I really want to talk about is the Buttermelt Blush High Pigment Buttery Soft Powder Blush by NYX Cosmetics. And that's because, as I have said 1,000 times in this video, hope you're not taking a shot every time I do, I'm looking for a purple blush and I'm also looking for a red blush. And so the colors, I think that's Had Butter and All the Butter are the two that are calling to me. I also know that I'm a sucker for a coral blush, and the Had Butter color is kind of like a red leaning coral. And so I think that's why I'm particularly interested in that one. That said, it's not quite the red that I am looking for to replace the Rare Beauty one that I had, so I won't be picking up that one. The All the Butter color I'm much more interested in. I think I saw Jen Phelps swatch these, and it seemed like this actually could be quite promising in terms of it actually remaining a purple blush on the skin. I believe NYX is sold at Shoppers Drug Mart in Canada, but I also think that these items haven't yet been released in the US. I know they're on the NYX website in the US, but I don't think they're like at Ulta stores yet. So I imagine that it will take probably a couple months before it comes to Canada for me to purchase. But when it does, I'll see if I can swatch it. I don't think NYX products are typically swatchable in store, but I'll probably be watching a few more videos to see what other people's experiences are like. And if it does come to Canada, then I'll make a decision at that point in time. Okay, the next product that I see is the Terracotta Super Bloom Sun Kiss Natural Healthy Glow Powder by Guerlain. I think the embossing on this product is absolutely gorgeous. That said, if you use your makeup, which one would expect that you would, that's typically why people buy makeup, is to use it. After you swipe your brush in here a couple times, that embossing is just going to be gone, and I imagine that it would look significantly less cute once that happens. So although beautiful to look at, I won't be purchasing those. Okay, so I'm just scrolling through and I don't think I see anything else that I think is worth me commenting on or that interests me enough to comment on. I'm just refreshing to see if there's anything. I am not seeing anything that really piques my interest, so I think I'll probably stop there. I hope you've enjoyed this new makeup releases video with a focus on why I won't be picking up the vast majority of these items, if any of them whatsoever. If you like this content, I hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. If you want to do more than that, I'll have a few links in the description with other ways that you can support me. And before you go, I'd love to hear from you. What are some items that have piqued your interest lately that you haven't bought and why you're not buying them? Before I go, I want to take a moment to thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this video. I hope you'll be back again soon. Bye.